and tell them, give them a letter grade for the Vikings all season.
I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm gonna give the Vikings off season. I'm not gonna lie to you. I probably give it a B plus. I'm gonna be real, and the reason why I say that is because they did have themselves a busy off season. Now I do like some of the changes that they made. For instance, a lot of people they first shifted to the Sam Darnold conversation. Sam Darnold leaves, he gets that 100 million plus contract from Seattle. Congratulations to him. I think he absolutely balled out last season. I think last season definitely earned him that contract. I can't dispute that. However, what I really like about them is they had a guy who we're going to talk about a little bit later, JJ McCarthy, right there on the back burner. Unfortunately for JJ McCarthy, I believe he probably would have been the starter eventually in that season last year, but obviously he tore his meniscus and he couldn't play for the rest of the year. So it was really tough not to see JJ McCarthy on that field because I had a lot of high promise for him. But what I really love about them is every single time there's a quarterback in that QB1 position for the Minnesota Vikings. And it's a big position to be in because it's a great offense. I will say that right now. I'm not saying that because I'm a Vikings fan. When you have Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson, Aaron Jones, Jordan Addison. I mean, and then overall, if we obviously there's new additions this year, but when you have an offense and those are your weapons, it's hard not to make you look good. And everybody thought that when Kirk was going to leave and we got Sam Darnold, everybody thought that this was going to be one of our worst seasons up to date. Sam Darnold got that second chance and he got that chance to prove what he can really do with a talented offense. And I'm not going to lie to you. I had no faith in Sam Darnold and he balled out. Now Sam Darnold goes to Seattle. Now a lot of people are saying, "Oh, maybe you should have kept him because he performed great." Now we got JJ McCarthy. So we went from Kirk Cousins, who was getting paid a boatload amount of money, from Sam Darnold for 1 year. Now you're under the pressure of re-signing Sam Darnold. So what did they say? Well, I'm gonna shift on to Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold can get his $100 million somewhere else, and they can spend the $100 million, and we'll keep JJ McCarthy on a rookie deal. Now I'm reading the comments right that now. Jordan Mason too. That's one of the new additions, and I'll get to that in a little bit. But Jordan Mason is going to be a huge key to this. But regardless, you look at what JJ McCarthy's got. I'm glad he mentioned that. If you go back to last year, so we didn't have no Jordan Mason. I'm super excited about Jordan Mason because I feel like I really like the Vikings when they have a dual running back system. We had Adrian Peterson, we had Dalvin Cook, but people forget when Dalvin Cook tore his ACL, I believe it was around his rookie year, we had two running backs, Latavius Murray and Jerick McKinnon, and both of those guys were carrying the load. And that year, we made it to the NFC Championship. So it's not always about the lead running back getting 1,000 yards and everything like that. Aaron Jones is capable of getting 1,000 yards, but Aaron Jones is obviously pushing age, which means Jordan Addison coming in, being that guy that's also going to help them establish that run game a lot more. It gives them more options, and I think that definitely helps JJ McCarthy. He still got Justin Jefferson. Jordan Addison. Now, I love Jordan Addison. I love the way he plays. I think he's smooth as butter. I really do. I think he's an insane route runner. I've gone on record. You could ask a lot of people I know. This might be a hot take. I think he might be a more consistent route runner than Justin Jefferson.
Hmm.
And that's a hot take to say, but go back and look at the film. Jordan Addison, let's put it this way. Jordan Addison, he knows how to run a route. He knows how to put people on skates. And on top of that, he's got some really good hands. And he's strong for a little guy. Let me say that. He's strong for a little guy. Let's not forget what he did to Travarius Ward in that 49ers game where he just yanked it out of his hand and took it to the house before halftime. Let's not forget about that. So Jordan Addison, he gets suspended again. And that's the thing. First, you go from DUI or speeding. Then you go to the same thing the next year. And then the next year, you get tested positive for PEDs. And
Hmm.
it just seems like there's some type of baggage that comes with this kid. But when there's not, he balls. So unfortunately for JJ McCarthy, if you go look at the training camp film, JJ McCarthy, he's not going to be without Jordan Addison. And Jordan Addison seems like a favorable target for JJ McCarthy. But regardless, if there's one guy that I think people need to watch out for, this is where you go to the draft class. It's Ty Felton. Ty Felton, he was a guy that they picked up a little bit later in the draft from the University of Maryland. He surpassed I think he was over 1,500 yards in that Maryland season. Again, a very good wide receiver, kind of slid under the radar because he played for Maryland. So this is going to be a good chance for him to pick up where Jordan Addison left off. And this is going to be a good chance for him to leave his mark early. And then on top of that, suppose Ty Felton don't work out, you have Jalen Naylor, who everybody forgot in the beginning of the year when we also really didn't have Jordan Addison. Jalen Naylor was getting a touchdown a game. So Jalen Naylor actually, for early in the season, he became a favorite for fantasy football. So in my opinion, Jalen Naylor, I still think he's going to be a guy who slides under the radar as well. So the wide receiver core is still there. They still got some hidden gems. Now you go to the tight ends, TJ Hawkinson, and the second tight end is Josh Oliver. People forget how good Josh Oliver is, and people forget how important Josh Oliver is. He might not be that type of guy to get you 100 yards as a tight end, but he's that type of guy that's going to pancake one of those blockers for your running back to get 10 yards. He's going to be one of those tight ends that could get you a first down because everybody's too worried about Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson, Jordan Addison when he's healthy. CJ Ham, I love CJ Ham. I want him to be a Minnesota Viking for life. The fullback position is something that's going away. I don't want to see CJ Ham away from the Minnesota Vikings. They better keep that fullback position specifically for him. Christian Darrisaw, a guy who is a great offensive lineman when he's healthy. I mean, a lot of people have been comparing. They're saying he's the next Trent Williams. But the problem is with that, he's never healthy enough to show it. But when he is healthy, he's proven that he could be one of the best offensive linemen in the game. Donovan Jackson, which was our first round pick. Now, what I find so interesting about Donovan Jackson, when they first picked him up, I was like, I'm not too sure about this pick. And the reason why is because I started looking at the film, and this wasn't a guy that was going to pancake blockers. This wasn't a guy that he looked like against some guys he couldn't really hold his own. Until I realized that this man was playing center, and he never played center in a day in his life. What happened was Ohio State's starting center who got hurt, and I can't remember his name. Anybody in the comments who knows that, feel free to jot it down for me. Ohio State had this center, a very good center, a very high praise center, and the center got hurt. Jackson, who was originally a guard and who was naturally a guard, had to move to center for the entire season. So when I looked at it, I looked at the stats. I think he only let go of 1 sack as a center. He didn't look too flashy. But the reason why I'm so excited about Donovan Jackson, I had to take a second look and see what he did at guard. And what I noticed was he's a good guard. Like, he can play. And I think it's definitely an upgrade from an Evan Ingram, who was a guy who was constantly stepping on Kirk Cousins' toes and literally stepping on Kirk Cousins' toes and tripping him. You don't know how many sacks Kirk Cousins had to take because Ed Ingram would step on his toes when he would back up. And it just annoyed me. So I'm glad that I do want to say Donovan Jackson, again, he might be unproven, but I do think it's still a step above Ed Ingram. Then you add Ryan Kelly, the center from the Colts. I still think he's an upgrade from Garrett Bradbury, who we had. Garrett Bradbury was solid. He was reliable, but he wasn't ever going to be an elite center. And it's what we needed. We needed a guy who was reliable, who was going to stay healthy, who was going to at least keep our offensive line somewhat in shape against some of these big teams. But again, I'm glad to have somebody like a Ryan Kelly, who is a veteran and who is able to go in there, take over the center spot, and hopefully become an upgrade in that position as well. And then this one I'm super excited for, Will Fries. Will Fries, thank you for coming to Minnesota, because this man has looked like a monster in training camp. And I'm just saying thank you to Will Fries for picking Minnesota as your destination, because we need this. We desperately need this. And I'm super stoked about Will Fries. I think he's going to be a huge, huge piece to this season, especially to that offense. And last but not least, old reliable, the captain, number 75, Mr. Buzz Lightyear lookalike, Brian O'Neill. Brian O'Neill, I want him to stay in that offense forever. So if we're looking at the offense, J.J. McCarthy is part of an offense that has so much potential in the world. It's an offense that could be super, super consistent. And it's an offense, before we got these key pieces, that if you asked a lot of these rookie quarterbacks, where did you want to go? They wanted to go to Minnesota. Let's not act like Caleb Williams wasn't talking to his dad saying, I have to get to Minnesota, because he didn't want to play for the Bears. Okay, let's not act like that wasn't a conversation. He willingly admitted it. And if you go look at last year's class with that huge stacked quarterback class, and you ask them, name one wide receiver who you want to throw the ball to, you could take a guess who that was.
Jettis.
There you go. So I'm just saying, J.J. McCarthy fell into the perfect situation, and when he tore his meniscus, it was brutal. But in a way, it was a blessing. Think about all these rookie quarterbacks and how they had to step into the fire week one. I like Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels cooked for y'all. But the beginning, if you go look statistically, it wasn't a clean start for him. He had to adjust. Then you throw guys like Drake May into the fire in a Patriots team that wasn't doing good. You could throw guys into the fire like Bo Nix, who's got to carry a Broncos team that's not going to make it. You throw in Michael Penix, who has to take over for Kirk Cousins, and he's in a position in the season where he's not going to make the playoffs. JJ McCarthy, he got hurt. It was an unfortunate injury, but he was the only one that could actually take a year and learn that playbook. And the best part about it is the offense is still the same. The playbook's still the same. He had a whole year just to learn the playbook before even stepping onto the field. I'm super excited about that offense, and I honestly think that JJ McCarthy's got even more tools now than he did last year. So I'm super excited.
Yeah, man, the offense looking good. A lot of key additions, like you said. And one thing about Aaron Jones, the issue with him was always will he play a full season. He always get nicked up and they come out. Last year was the first time. No, sorry, it was a third time in his career he played a full season. So that's a good sign right there. But bringing in Jordan Mason could take the load off him. And then your offensive line, I think that's key. Y'all have everything. And y'all have a last year y'all had a good offensive line, but y'all made some upgrades on the offensive line, which is good. Talk to me about the defense though, because a lot of things happen on the defensive side of the ball too.
For sure. Well, I'm going to mention a Washington legend, a
Uh
Washington
huh.
Jonathan Allen. I'm happy to have him on the team. And I was a
Great,
little,
great
I'm not going to
man.
lie to you. Originally, I was skeptical because I was like, Jonathan Allen's been in this league for a long time. I've always been a fan of Jonathan Allen, but I was always skeptical because I was saying to myself, are we getting the real Jonathan Allen? And I'm in a group chat with some friends I went to college with, and God, do they love busting my chops? They love it. They just constantly try to poke fun at me. So whenever you guys get this reel going, it's getting sent to them. I'm letting them know. But I asked them, I said, what do you guys think about Jonathan Allen? Are we getting a good pickup? And they said yes. They said he got hurt. Unfortunately, he had an
Mm-hmm.
injury season. And again, that's also always a concern when somebody gets injured, whether or not they're going to play a full season, like you said with Aaron Jones. But I mean, I'm not asking for a prime Jonathan Allen. I want people to understand that right now. It would be great to get a prime Jonathan Allen. Don't get me wrong. I'm not asking for a prime Jonathan Allen. I'm asking for a defensive tackle that's going to stand side by side with Harrison Phillips and is going to be reliable throughout the season. If I can get that out of Jonathan Allen, that's perfectly fine with me. When Patrick
Mm-hmm.
Peterson came to the Vikings a few years ago, you think I was expecting prime Pat Pete? No. But you know what? Patrick Peterson, he was reliable. Even though there were times maybe he got burnt a little bit, he was always reliable. He was always a corner that if you needed a game-winning pick, he was going to get it. He was always that corner that he was going to clutch up when you needed him to. And that's the only thing I'm asking for out of Jonathan Allen. So we start off there. Everybody talks about Jonathan Allen. Nobody talks about Javon Hargrave.
Ooh.
Javon Hargrave, hey, look, you're talking about Jonathan Allen, Harrison Phillips, and Javon Hargrave. To me, that's a great defensive tackle, defensive tackles to go with. Now, I really do like Javon Hargrave. Again, he's been around some championship teams, so hopefully he can bring that championship presence to the Vikings. And I always thought Javon Hargrave was underrated when it came to a lot of defenses that he was on. They always talked about the star guys when he was in San Fran. You talk about Fred Warner, Nick Bosa, Travarius Ward at some point, but you never really heard about Hargrave. But Hargrave was there, and Hargrave had a big impact on that D line.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm happy that he can bring that to us.
You're a
We
big
go to
guy.
Jonathan. I'm super stoked about him, and overall those D tackles, I feel like they're gonna have a great season. And then on top of that, behind those D tackles, you got somebody like Levi Drake Rodriguez, who was a rookie last year for us. You got somebody like Jalen Redmond, who nobody even thought he had a chance of making the roster, and he went in there and he had a couple of very big plays and during that season. So overall, I really do love these defensive tackles that the Vikings have. It was a weakness for us heading into last year, but I feel like heading into this season, I feel like you're going to see a lot of defensive tackles switching out, switching in, and I feel like it's going to confuse a lot of offenses. Then we go to Jonathan Grenard. I was happy about Jonathan Grenard. You were talking about a guy who was having 12 and a half sacks on the Texans. Again, the Texans, when you look at their defense, you always talked about Stingley, and there were some guys that the Texans had on defense, but nobody really talked about Jonathan Grenard, even though he was a big impact on that defense. And when we lost Danielle Hunter, I'm saying to myself, it's going to be really hard to replace somebody like Danielle Hunter. That was
Yep.
somebody I feel like they should have re-signed. And maybe in my mind, there's something in the back of my mind that said maybe we should have still re-signed him. But Jonathan Grenard, he held his own. He had a great season. I believe he had a Pro Bowl season at that. And another part of me says, well, if we re-sign Danielle Hunter, we probably don't get Jonathan Grenard, and we probably don't get this next guy coming in, Andrew Van Ginkel.
Woo! That's a big pickup.
Give me Andrew Van Ginkel. I'll take Andrew Van Ginkel and Jonathan Grenard over one Danielle Hunter.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, give me Van Ginkel because Van Ginkel was super reliable, and I was super reliable, super consistent, super versatile. I mean, the guy, he had 2 picks, I believe 2 or 3 pick sixes last year. Overall, this dude was just a beast. And I knew Van Ginkel was going to be underrated. I didn't think he was going to be this. I saw what he
Mm.
did in Miami, and I was like, okay, that's very promising. He might end up being a decent and a very, he might end up being a decent piece for the Vikings, and he might end up being a guy who contributes. I didn't expect him to be potentially the best defender on that team. Did not expect that at
Yeah.
all. So Van Ginkel, hey, I'm glad that we got you for a few more years, and I'm super happy about it. So we're talking about Texan linebackers. Let's talk about the other guy, Blake Cashman.
Hmm.
Cashman, another underrated linebacker, great with tackles. And again, we needed a guy who could get you 100 tackles. And we had a guy named Eric Kendricks at one point who was really good at that. He was the tackle guy. He was the guy that would pop back into coverage. Well, Blake Cashman, he took over that tackle role. I feel like once we had no more Eric Kendricks, and when Blake Cashman came in, Blake Cashman really provided a good piece of this defense, and he really provided a good tackling essence, a guy who isn't going to let go of a first down, a guy who will be a reliable tackle, who can get you 100 tackles in a game. And that's exactly what I wanted. And then another guy who is super young, a guy who, for some reason, had over 150 tackles at the University of Cincinnati. He had over 10 sacks, and he went undrafted. Thank you to every single team that didn't draft him, including the Vikings, because you guys picked him up as an undrafted free agent. Ivan Pace Jr. If Ivan Pace Jr. can have a full, healthy season, I'm going to say this right now. This might be the best linebacking core in the NFL.
Mm.
Best linebackers, because there's some great linebackers out there, but the best linebacking core in the NFL, in my opinion. Because when you have 4 guys who can potentially get you 10 sacks alone, I'm not saying they're going to get all 10 sacks in a season, but when you have 4 guys who, if they were just an individual linebacker on a different team, could get you a potential 10 sack season, to me, that's just hard to beat.
Yeah.
So I really am super excited about these linebackers. Now, the secondary, this is the one that's going to be the big question. So you got rid of Cam Bynum. In my opinion, they should have re-signed Cam Bynum. Not only was Cam Bynum a good safety, very good. He was very good against the Niners. I'll say that right now. But Cam Bynum also provided this energy on the team. Let's not forget about all the High School Musical dances that he was
Oh
doing in
yeah.
celebrations. I mean, you were watching the Minnesota Viking games just to see if the defense was going to get an interception and just to see what Cam Bynum was going to prepare up for that dance, because he was going celebration of the year week in and week out. Every single time you didn't think he could top that celebration, the next week he topped it. He did the Parent Trap, White Chicks Dance, High School Musical, Camp Rock. The dude did the break dancer in the Olympics, who wasn't even.
Yeah.
I mean, my bad. I'm sorry for bringing up the 49ers, but regardless, I do miss Cam Bynum. I do miss Cam Bynum. So overall, you replace him with Isaiah Rodgers. I I'm not too hooked on Isaiah Rodgers. I'm not saying he's a bad player. He was a decent piece for that Eagles defense, but you could tell
Yeah.
that they're moving on from him once they really started beefing up that defense, once they started getting new pieces in the secondary. So Isaiah Rodgers, that's going to be the biggest test for me. We got Jeff Okudah. Now, Jeff Okudah, he really hasn't had a proper chance in the NFL. I'm going to say that right now. He got drafted by the Lions. You really didn't see much from him out of the Lions. He was constantly getting hurt. And Jeff Okudah's looked good in camp, but I'm really interested to see how Jeff Okudah is going to look if he ever gets that starting position in that corner. Because y'all forget, he was a beast at Ohio State. So I'm just hoping that it's a Sam Darnold thing where he hasn't had a real chance. And when he gets
Opportunity.
that
Yeah.
chance, he can live up to that potential.
That could be Isaiah Rogers too, though.
Yeah, for sure. And he's going to have to figure out how to basically, he's going to have to figure out how to get that playing time, and anything could happen. Injuries happen every single year. So
Hmm.
I'm hoping no key players get injured, but you never know what could happen. I'm just hoping that when it's time for Jeff Okudah to step up, he's able to do it. So
Hmm.
then you go to the strong safety, Josh Metellus. I love Josh Metellus. Now, in my opinion, I'm sad to see Cam Bynum go, but I do believe that Josh Metellus is more valuable for that defense. Josh Metellus, in case y'all don't know, here's a little fun fact. Josh Metellus, I believe it was last year. It was last year or the year before. Josh Metellus played all 11 positions on defense. We're
Ooh.
talking about a guy who played strong safety, free safety, corner, slot corner, linebacker. He played D tackle. He played D end, edge. There was literally a stat of how many times he played each position. This guy is a guy who can play safety and can play D line. So, in my opinion, this was a 6th round pick that we got a few years ago out of Michigan. Another guy I really didn't expect much out of, but when he got his starting chance, you told him, "Hey, line up at linebacker, no problem. Line up at safety, not going to be an issue. Line up at corner, no problem. I'm gonna lock him down. Go on the D line. I'll blitz off the edge. He can do literally anything that you want him to do, and he's another great personality on that team. If y'all don't know about the Viking social media, he has this thing called Tell Us When Metellus, and he basically asks these players a bunch of different questions. And if y'all don't understand, it's very similar to when we had Brian Robinson, and he asked the team. There's a famous video, name one guy on this team you wouldn't want to date your sister.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Playing digs. It's very, very similar to that. So if y'all want some good football entertainment, make sure y'all go check that out. Metellus, he's a very good personality on that team, so I'm glad we got him back. My favorite Viking,
Okay.
Harrison Smith. No words. Harrison Smith, that's my favorite Viking as of right now. He's been on this team since 2012. I think he's a future Hall of Famer. If you compare his stats with Troy Polamalu, he has better stats than him. The only thing he doesn't have is Super Bowl. I don't think he's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, but he will be a future Hall of Famer. And I do think that Harrison Smith is the last of a dying breed. So shout out to Harrison Smith, constantly taking pay cuts to stay on this team, constantly doing whatever it takes, constantly teaching the new guys that are coming in. Overall, I just love Harrison Smith. I hope that he stays a Viking forever, and I'm hoping that he retires as a Viking. So I'm glad that he's on this team. Byron Murphy Jr., Pro Bowl corner. Now, here's the thing about Byron Murphy Jr. Y'all aren't going to like this, but I like Byron Murphy Jr. I don't trust him 100% when it comes to coverage. And the reason why is because Byron Murphy Jr., he's very good at picks. But the problem is with Byron Murphy, he's not that type of guy that's going to be a clamp up guy who's going to tighten up. He's not that type of guy that's going to go, you're going to line up against Jamar Chase, lock him down, or at least sustain. He's not that type of guy, but he will be that type of guy that if you throw a bad ball, he's going to be in the right place to catch it. And so I do like that about him. It's kind of like when the Dolphins had Xavier Howard.
Yes.
Xavier Howard, again, how many seasons did he have multiple picks? How many seasons was he at least the top 3 in picks? There was some seasons where he led in picks, but overall, that means you get thrown at a lot. And in my opinion, there would be times where I'm looking at Byron Murphy and he would intercept the ball, and I'm like, God, you're so lucky that went right to you. Because if it just went a little bit over your head, that would have been gone. And I like Byron Murphy. I'm hoping that he can tighten up the coverage, and I'm hoping that he can somehow embrace a cornerback 1 role. I remember another corner who had a lot of potential with the Vikings, and they really had to get him into his prime, was Xavier Rhodes. Xavier Rhodes was a very corner for the Vikings, but everybody remembers him as the holding guy. What they did was they put for the next season coming up, they put boxing gloves on him so he wouldn't hold, and that taught him how to be a real cover corner. And then he had that insane 2017 where he was locking down Antonio Brown, Odell Beckham, Mike Evans, so on and so forth. Your number 1 corner, he was holding them under 100 yards. That's what I'm hoping they can do with Byron Murphy. I'm hoping that he's not just going to be the pick guy. I'm hoping that he's going to be that guy that's going to be able to lock down your number 1, because you're going to be going up against some bad dudes. I mean, you're going up against Amon St. Brown 2 times a year. Roma Doozy, he's got a lot of promise, so if he pops into his prime, that's going to be a tough battle. No. You got Jamar Chase early in the season. Like, it's not going to be easy. It's going to be a hard season. You got EK Metcalf on the Steelers that you're going to have to guard. It's going to be a tough season. AJ Brown, thank you. Like, even Devontae Smith, if you got to go up against him, these are going to be some tough guys. Seattle, you got to go up against Cooper. Like, he's going to have to learn how to lock up if he's going to be the number 1 corner. He's not going
to. We sign him. Go ahead.
I'm glad that you mentioned that, because there's so many guys that he's going to have to be able to cover. And I just hope that he can become more of a coverage corner. And last but not least, Mekhi Blackman. Now, y'all don't know about Mekhi Blackman. Mekhi Blackman, he had when his rookie year, he kind of struggled in the beginning. Dealt with a little bit of injuries. Towards the end of the year, he really started picking it up. And then last year, he had a season-ending injury as well, and we didn't see him. Mekhi Blackman, I got a lot of promise with, but he's another 50-50. Are we going to see the Mekhi Blackman at the end of his rookie season or the beginning? Because if it's the end, I'm all for it. If it's the beginning, then we got some problems. But there's going to be one guy, and I know you like to do bold predictions, and I'm going to mention this guy when I say it. But there is one guy that, if you're going to watch the Vikings defense, keep an eye out for this guy, and it's Dwight McGlothern, number 29. Okay. Just keep an eye out for him, and I'll give my bold prediction a little at the end of this episode. But Dwight McLaughlin, for y'all watching this episode right now, keep your eye on him. But overall, I think this defense, they got a lot of questions, but overall, they do got a lot of promise as well. I really do like the D line and the linebackers, and I believe they're going to have to do a lot extra to maybe kind of make up for the secondary a little bit. I know they got Harrison Smith and Josh Metellus as safeties, and that's going to be cool. Byron Murphy, he's going to have to prove that he can be a number one cover linebacker, cover corner, excuse me. But overall, I do think the defense has promise, but there's some questions that also has to be answered come the beginning of the season and all the way to the end as well.
Okay, and you said B minus, right?
B
Or B
plus,
plus?
B
B
plus,
plus. Sorry.
B plus. Yeah.
All right, B plus for the Vikings. They were very busy this all season. Okay, so let's go to your quarterback.